So with that, I'm not going to try to introduce the panel. What I'm going to do instead is to introduce the two superintendents and ask them briefly to talk about their districts, just the basic sort of characteristics of their districts, and to introduce their team very briefly. Okay, so and first, David McLaughlin is the superintendent of Hesperia Unified.
Good morning. Oh, I'm live. I'm sort of in awe and honored to be here to talk, and I'm excited to be able to introduce my team, because everything we're going to talk about really relates to what they've done and what they've done to support our vision and the incredible things that and the synergy really that they've developed as a team. Hesperia Unified is a school district of about 21,000 students. We're up on the high desert off of Interstate 15. Our statistics, 60% Hispanic, 27% Caucasian. SES is about 75%. We have 25% English learners, and about 10% Spanish. So we're somewhat average in a lot of ways. Let me introduce Jovi Youngkoskis, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. And I'll let you introduce your team in just a minute. And David, do you want me to talk a little bit about our vision, or you want to go back to that?
Let's come back to that.
Okay.
Let's just introduce ourselves.
So let me have Jovi introduce our team.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here. To my right is Robert McCollum, our Director of Secondary Education and Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. We have long titles in our district, so yes. And then to his right is Jody Constant, our Coordinator of Professional Development, Charter Schools, and Teacher Induction. And then to her right, we have David Kane, who is one of our instructional coaches, our district coaches, who was a teacher on assignment out of Oak Hills High School, an English teacher. So we carry lots of hats.
And that's why I asked you to introduce them. Thank you, David.
Sure. And I'd like to introduce Kurt Madden, who is the superintendent of Bear Valley Unified.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to represent Bear Valley. First thing I'd like to do is introduce my A team. The first person to my left, this is Lisa Hahn, and Lisa is one of our instructional facilitators. She really focuses in on K through 6. To her left, we have Dr. Lisa Weiner, and Lisa is really an expert on writing. And it's amazing how she shared her story to teach a writing lesson to first or second graders, because her background is really at the college and at the high school level. She's also a part-time grant writer, and again, just another top-notch individual. To her left is Jeremy Little, and Jeremy is also an instructional facilitator. His emphasis really is on STEM, which might be going to STEAM, which might be going to, we're not quite sure yet. But these are people that truly work behind the scenes to really make it happen. Bear Valley is a very small school district. We have 2,568 great students. We're at 7,000 feet. Again, 4-season resort. This year, though, we didn't have winter. One thing was missed, so we've gotten right into spring. When we look at our breakdown, we have about 71% of our students that are on free and reduced. Hispanic population about 37%. We look at EL at about 25%, and our special education population is rising. We're probably right around 12 or 13%.
Okay, thank you both. And David McLaughlin, I'll interrupt your note-taking. If you'd like to talk a little bit about the district's vision and how Common Core implementation fits into that.
So in Hesperia, I've been superintendent. This is my second year, or into my second year. And one of the things that we've really tried to focus on in this last year in particular is setting free, as the term I use, our passion and innovation. And one of the things that I realized was, especially with Common Core, is that this is the opportunity to use that vision to make things happen this year. We also talked about that this is the year that counts. And a lot of our goal has been to try new things to allow, especially administrators and our teachers, to use this year to be innovative in the classroom and engaging students and experimenting with lesson plans and doing those things that would have some kind of long-term benefit. You know, I come from the business side of the house, and we often think in 3-year plans as far as budget. And so we look at a decision that's based on what that implication is over, say, 3 years. When we talked even a year ago about what we wanted to do with Common Core, I talked often about the ability for us to multiply the positive effects if we get it going this year, as opposed to just sort of dabbling with it over the next couple of years. And so while we want to work smart and go slow, we also want to be urgent in what we're doing. And our team, in focusing on our overall district goal, which is preparing today's students for tomorrow's world, has really focused on deliberateness and urgency in making and working on the training. And we've really modified a lot of what we've done over the last year. And in fact, at some point, I'll let the team describe the action plan and how that fits in with the 4 C's we're working on, the relevance, the PLC implementation, and how we're going about the deliberateness of our process. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Kurt Madden, you want to talk a little bit about how Common Core fits in with the strategic vision in Bear Valley?
You know, I think the Common Core is a great fit for Bear Valley. 25 years ago, I was a science teacher, and it's amazing, back in the 1990s, we were kind of doing the Common Core. So for me, I'm very comfortable. It's kind of like riding a bike. Also, I couldn't ask for a more progressive school board. They are leaning so far into this, it is at times scary. I need to pull them back just a little bit. So they're very, very supportive. What we've tried to do this year is we've really tried to emphasize a real robust technology program. We are working toward being to one-to-one very soon. We have seen in classrooms where we have technology from our elementary school to middle school to high school in our continuation program. We have truly empowered our learners, and I think that's been real good to see. Our board is very, very excited and curious about project-based learning, innovative programs. They really want to de-emphasize summative assessments. And we've had to say that not once, not twice, but repeatedly, to give our teachers a certain amount of comfort that we're not in that area now of no child left behind. We also want to create a very progressive culture, that we can truly be a place where we can grow our people. And even though we're at 7,000 feet, sometimes things don't grow quite as quickly. We want to have that mindset, and I think that's really good, because we want to encourage the risk-taking, again, the progressive thinking, and really what is best for our students to be better prepared for college or their careers. With our principals, we're really trying to put them in the spotlight in a good way, that they are the instructional leaders. I'm excited that when I get into my board meetings every month, I do a report, and I just call them performance indicators. Our principals and myself, we're averaging over 200 classroom visits monthly. What's nice is when Lisa Hahn is at a school site as an instructional facilitator, and I'm there for a scheduled visitation, we meet with the principal and we strategize. Let's get into every single classroom. What are some things that you've done in your professional learning communities that we want to look at today? When Lisa is there with the principal and myself, talk about a shared vision, and talk about reality, and talk about excellence, and talk about, hey, these are some areas we need to support. It is so profound because it creates context. And I think that is very, very powerful. That information is shared with our Board of Education. Imagine being in a school district where you can come in as a parent, community member, instructional coach, teacher, classified staff, and you can engage with the Board of Education about Common Core, about the direction we're going, about some of the pain that we're having with time and professional development, and really make it interactive. There's not too many places where that's happening, but in Bear Valley, I will tell you, this is our reality.
Okay, thank you. And as I often say, vision is one thing, but it's teachers who actually have to do the work. And so I'm going to ask Lisa, if you want to talk about how you've engaged teachers in the work of Common Core implementation in Bear Valley.
Okay, we started last year we pulled all the teachers together at the elementary and repaced using the Common Core, so that this year we had some context to move forward. We also started by looking at instructional shifts that they were going to need to be making. This year, first semester, well, let me step back. We bring the teachers together in grade level or department groups, and they work in a PLC. Our district's so small that excuse me, we might have 8 teachers at a grade level. So they are the PLC together. If we didn't do that at some schools, we only have a teacher and a half at grade level. So the first semester we focused on ELA. We did professional development and close reading, authentic, and then we used the authentic literacy template from the Focus book by Schmoker. And we also talked about the 4 C's and incorporating those in all of our lessons. And second semester, we're focusing now on math. Jeremy did a great presentation on 8 mathematical practices to give us context. And we're focusing on balance between conceptual exploratory learning, fluency, and procedural, and then the application to real world and performance tasks. So we're creating units together in math, and that's been pretty powerful. I'll let Lisa and Jeremy talk a little bit about.
I'll talk a little bit about the secondary. Those of you that have taught elementary and secondary know that secondary teachers are a little bit harder to move along. So we are, since I've taught all levels, I'm familiar with that. So what I've just now been able to worm my way into at the middle school is we're going to start planning all-day curriculum planning days like Lisa's done at the middle school or at the elementary level. So I'm looking forward to that. I've met with them several times. We've gone over authentic literacy lessons. We've gone over and looked very closely at the performance tasks, and we've walked through designing some of our own, pulling from several different resources. And that's kind of where we're at with the middle school at this point. The high school, they're very competent English teachers. You just ask them and they will tell you. So that's a little bit hard to sell, but they are, in truth, they're very open to these changes, and a lot of them are using these strategies already. And I think that's one of the power of the presentations is when we look at what Common Core is asking, often they'll say, oh, I've been doing that for years. So it's not such a huge shift in language with the focus on expository and on the writing piece. It's not quite as large as in the math department, so that's why I'm glad I'm an ELA teacher, and I'll give the math to Jeremy.
It is a big shift in math. We've been talking for a long time in the secondary about that shift from traditional, can you hear me? Thanks. Traditional pathway to integrated. And so that decision has just recently been made. Again, we are very small, and we could get all the teachers in one room to fight it out, and there was some fighting. The middle school adopted integrated pathway this year. So 7th and 8th grade, we've been teaching Common Core standards, Math 7 and Math 8. There are some challenges with acceleration. How do we meet the needs of the super accelerated students that want to get multiple AP courses by the time they're done with high school? So we're still working those out. In high school, we have decided to move to the integrated pathway. We'll start next year with 9th grade, so we'll offer Math 1 integrated Common Core standards to 9th graders and keep the rest traditional. That way, as students move forward and move up, we'll just make that transition with the students. And it seems pretty common sense, and I think most teachers are on board, although materials are an issue for math teachers especially. There are not a lot of adopted math materials, and the ones I've seen seem like they're the same standards that have just been stamped with Common Core. So we're still working on that, and as we review things, we're looking at a Math Vision project, which is online from Utah. We're looking at integrating that with Pearson's textbooks, and teachers are creating their own units. So it's that combination and that blend. And in science, we're 1 year behind. We're going to be integrating the next generation science standards next year. And so math we went first, and science comes next.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to ask Jody and David, as the two who are closest to the classroom in Hesperia, to address the same question. Or,
Robert's been.
We're going to start with Robert. We're a team.
You're a team,
We're
okay.
a team, so
well,
we'll
right.
start with Robert.
We're an accident.
I'm trying to read those long titles and figure out who's doing what. So.
Well, one of the things, and I hope torches aren't lit with what I'm about to say, but I could care less about the Common Core standards. You might find that surprising because this isn't about the standards. We have a unique opportunity. Our standards are very important. They're very well written. But as David mentioned, this is the year that really counts. And so this is all about the learning process for us. And this is how we de-emphasize that with our teachers. It's not so much about the standards, and let me explain why I said that. Because in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, politicians could decide, you know what, we're going to change these standards. And that makes a lot of sense because we don't have that power. We have to kind of fall in line. So if we design a very strong process to look at the learning, and that's what we've done and it's very unified, I think we're going to go far beyond what we need to do. We don't want to repeat the mistakes that we did before when we had our first set of standards, where that's all we focused on. We focused on the standards, we focused on the outcome as far as the assessment that was mentioned earlier. And certainly we forgot about the kids. And so what we're trying to create in Hesperia Unified is that balance again of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And so we're taking advantage of this year, and we're really developing some things that are really monumental as far as that type of change that we need within our district in itself. One of the things that we really focused on is really looking at the units of study. And instead, again, looking at the individual standards, we're trying to look at the big ideas. What do we want the kids to take away from the learning? It's not so much about, okay, they need to know how to do X, they need to know how to do Y, but how does it fit together? Where's the relevancy? And so we've approached it that way, and it's really resonated with our teachers. Now, going back and looking about our units of study, certainly one of the things that has really held us back a little bit is the mindset, because, you know, I think it was mentioned earlier, we have a swatch of teachers that we've given everything to in the last 15 years. And people like me that, you know, are a little bit older, we started off our careers and we really approached this probably the same way we're approaching it now. And so we're getting away from the textbooks. We're having our teachers build authentic, organic units of study where they're collecting the resources. And I know Mr. Kane and Jody are going to talk about that just in one moment here. But certainly as we make this transition, this transformation, it's incumbent on us to create the information that we need. Textbook folks, they do a really good job as far as collecting the information. But in reality, as we present the information, as we create those units, we know our students better. And so we have to have that ability to create those monumental units that are going to have an effect. And plus, as we create the units, we can control the units, we can infuse the information. We, you know, as media comes along, we have a reservoir of knowledge that we can go back to. And so that's one of the things we've been really focusing our teachers on is developing. And you know, we did start our process off with the calibration. And here's some of the things that really kind of hit hard on us. Information is gold. And as we were doing that calibration process, we were bringing our teachers down, and they were going to be the trainers go back and talk. But you know what? It became a really bad game of telephone. And not all the information was getting out there. So what we decided to do as a district is we went individually to the site. We have 950 teachers. We wanted to make sure they had that very valuable gold type information. And so we have set up a lot of different ways to do this. We call it our CART trainings, which is our curriculum articulation team. We go out and we have had 4 this year. We've gone to 25 different schools, our team. And so it's about 200 hours worth of training that we've done, but that information, those building blocks that are so critical in this transition to the new standards is very critical that they have that same information.
Well, one of the things that we were doing are the CART trainings, and I'm going to let David talk about that because he says something and then I always have my little bit that I do with him, so I don't want to take over that. But I did want to just really talk about, as we were listening earlier, the summary results that we see in our county, the report that was mentioned earlier. We sat there and that was so confirming to us because we're going, yes, those are the exact same experiences that we're having. And we really looked at research, lots of research. And one of the researchers that we heard, and it's really resonated with us, is Marzano, Dr. Marzano. And he says you need a deliberate process for deliberate results. And so we put this process in place to really make sure that we're going to have teachers, students, and administrators that are really leaders of learning, not just instructional leaders, but leaders of learning. And that shift, that paradigm shift from teaching to learning is super important to us. And so we like to emphasize that. And that process has come about really through professional learning communities. And it's not an easy process, and everybody's in a different stage there, but the true collaboration, and we say all the time to our teachers, if you want 21st century learners in your class, and we want kids that are college and career ready, then our teachers better be practicing those 4 C's. They better be collaborating, communicating, thinking critically, being creative in how they're looking at things. And it has really, you have to risk curiosity. And you know, talking about, you know, Dave, this is the year that counts. Giving us the ability to fail and reflect and kind of look at continuous improvement and plan, do, study, act has been very important for us. And it's really this organic process. And so as Robert talked about calibration and what we learned from that communication piece wasn't happening quite as well, we came up with the CART concept. And so I'm going to let David talk about the CART concept.
Thank you. You know, I'll reiterate a bit of what Jody said as well. As Brent, as you shared, we found ourselves just nodding our heads saying exactly in so many of those instances. We took advantage of some processes that we already had established. We already had grade level subject area representatives from all over the district that would meet several times each year. So we took advantage of that several years ago as we started to provide the materials. We started, you know, hinting at, you know, these proposals of these national standards that are coming out and what the implications for that might mean. So we capitalized upon those things. But as we started to get more and more into this, we realized something rather dramatic. As you can see, we say rather dramatic things. Something else, you know, we've realized that we have been tainted for the last 15 years. You know, if anything, you know, in a moderate sense, we need to sort of have like a, I don't know, a Common Core baptism, you know? Some other teachers have proposed to me, no, 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 it is an exorcism. And that's really what we need. We need to completely divorce ourselves from those notions that we had before, notions about instruction and assessment and curriculum that were horribly, horribly out of balance to the detriment of students. So as we started to think about the idea of how we could implement some of these things in our district and how we could bring teachers along in this process, we came across, you know, this radical notion that we would go to every single school site and that we would talk with every single teacher, both presentation as well as actual work time with them, that we would be coming right alongside them as they learn by doing, rather than some of those old strategies that we used to do, you know, the unpacking standards. Oh my gosh, if you say that to me again, I'm sorry, I will fall apart right here. Yeah, circle the verb, underline. No, all those old systems that we used to do were for content standards that we no longer have. We've got a set of goals. Just last week I was down here and hearing Tim Shanahan being very specific about that, validating some very things that we've been saying as a district. And so we went out to every single school site, but our real message was this. We started out with some ideas with talking about general idea of these new standards and the shifts and what the implications for that are. And we talked about issues of classroom instruction, and most recently we talked about assessment. And we say radical things with assessment, that we don't assess students enough. You can gasp. Go ahead. You gasp at Robert. We don't assess students enough, but the right kind of assessment. Those formative assessments, those common formative assessments, those most powerful tools that we have, we're not using those enough. And so the big idea that we keep coming back to with these CART presentations is we're there to validate teachers. You know, as was particularly pointed out, we've got a group of teachers who've been in the classroom anywhere from 3 to 15 years who know nothing but our old standards. Standards that were given to them, curriculum that was given to them, scripted sorts of approaches. And instead, we're coming and saying, you are professional educators. You are leaders. You know your students best. You know how to become that mediator between a complicated text and a student level that may be far beneath that. It is up to you, and we believe in you. We know that you can build something great. And so the amazing thing that we're seeing because of this is teachers not only feeling empowered, but they're implementing these things. They're creating these incredible units of study that they're collaborating with their peers on a regular basis, both together physically as well as online in a virtual world as well, building these incredible tools for students. And they're adapting all the time. They're having discussions and saying, we designed this assessment, but it's no longer meeting the needs of our students. We're going to have to create a new assessment. And it's adapting, and it's exactly the goals that we would want. And so it's really amazing to see those things.
Okay, so change the subject a little bit. So David McLaughlin, what have you done to engage the broader community in the process of Common Core implementation?
I'm sure we've done a lot of what a lot of folks have done. Maybe with some ideas, some things to a greater degree, some to a lesser. We've certainly provided information related to our program with our board. We've gone through Common Core study sessions with them. We actually had a one board workshop where we had the board come off of the dais, sit at a table, and actually do a study with so what was that on? That was on strategies, Common Core strategies, and they actually participated. Some of you have done the marshmallow and the spaghetti. The board was doing that lesson. Several board members said this is the way we should have been teaching, or one older teacher board member said this is the way I taught years ago. So we've tried to engage our board. Certainly our administrators and our teachers is what was just described. I think one of the most powerful things that I've observed, especially from my background, is the CART trainings and the way they've evolved to really go after the concept of being every student or every teacher, and by extrapolation every student. The other thing I'm really proud of is this concept that we had this Saturday, which was our plugged-in conference, where we as a district sponsored Common Core conference. We had 44 of our own sessions presented by our teachers and administrators, 350 or so teachers from all over the county in attendance, with the goal of trying to demystify a lot of what occurs in the classroom, give examples, let our teachers be validated by the process. We had a guest speaker, sort of a keynote, a gentleman named Rafe Esquith, who also wrote the book Teach You Like Your Hair's on Fire. Very unique title for a book. And he did an outstanding job really talking about the importance of the classroom teacher. And I'll let Jovi maybe elaborate a little bit as it relates to some of the other steps that we've been doing recently.
I just want to clarify something regarding those CART meetings. As you guys know, we over 25 schools and programs. Our teams have been out to each one 4 different times this year, so we've been very busy. And again, the topics were, the first one was introducing the philosophy behind learning versus the standards, kind of what Robert was talking about. Standards are important, yes, but the focus is on learning and how we teach our kids and how we reach our kids. So that was one of our first CART meetings. Another one was about PLCs and how they tie together, how this all, in order for us to implement Common Core and the learning in implementing learning strategies is through, we look at it as the vehicle, PLC is the vehicle to do that. So we really emphasize PLCs. Then we had a whole session on units of study. and training our teachers on what that looks like, how to go from a big idea. It's surprising how, when I would sit in on these and be at those trainings, how many teachers really don't understand the big idea because all they know are the standards and just pick off, check off, I did that standard, I did that standard, I did that standard. Okay, I got them listed. Okay, I got all my dots on there, so I did my job this year, I did the standards. Well, what did they learn? Well, they did the standards. Well, what does that mean? How does that apply to real world? So that's where our units of study are critical. It brings us back to the relevance. You know, it has the rigor within it, has the relevance and relationship. The unit of study is critical in our district, and I have copies for you guys to show you, to share with you a template. But we also, in that training, we also, David and our other coaches, currently we have 8 curriculum coaches, and the board has allowed us to hire 8 more. So by next year, we'll have 16. They will be out at sites helping firsthand with the teachers as they develop and implement these units of study. Anyway, at the unit of study, what was also critical, when you get a copy of this, and I think it's important to say here, is they've actually put pull downs. So if they need help in understanding what a big idea is, for example, you click on it and takes them to a site to really explain what big ideas are. So along with our training, they have resources to go back to their classrooms and work as a team. Pull downs on all the standards, pull downs on different strategies they could implement. These are just ideas for them. So anyway, I just want to really emphasize how important those units of study are. And then we have one on assessments, on common formative assessments, how to write them. And we're going to get more in detail with Smarter Balance about what those tasks look like, what that will look like in upcoming. So when they kind of breeze through, oh yeah, we went out and did all these things. The magnitude of this with 940, 50 teachers getting out to every site and sending the same message, it was critical, but they did it. We're exhausted. And then we also, to relate, I'll go back to that in a minute. Yes, those sessions, we had Common Core parent meetings. We reached out, we trained, made sure our principals were trained on the Common Core so that when they relayed the message, it was the same message at every school site. And to ensure the same message, I know this sounds top down, but it really isn't, it's just for support. One of us, of our team at the district level, were at those meetings as well, so we could answer questions and give support if parents had any questions. We also went out, we had like town hall type meetings, but they also were presenting up to their school site councils, their ELACs. We also have a district parent advisory committee that our superintendent holds on a monthly basis, and they're informed of the Common Core standards. Our district advisory committee, it's all parents from every school site, you have parent representation, and our DLAC, you guys all are familiar with that, our district level, they've all been informed of our push to implement Common Core standards, and our philosophy behind that is about learning, and that is the biggest bang for our buck. When parents hear we're focusing not on those little checkoff standards, we're really focusing on their students' learning and how to reach them. They have complete mind, they want to be a part of it. We also have our district website, which has all the information about Common Core, but we listed in there ideas for them to help their students at home in parent-friendly language. So that's another way we also communicate out. We meet regularly with our union groups. I have a monthly meeting scheduled with both our teacher union and our classified union, along with our division, to talk through challenges, successes, and how do we continue to improve and move forward. So it's getting their input as we continue to move. So I think that's about it. Well, roundtable, we meet twice a month with our administrators, and we have one that's called Principals Roundtable. That's where we do a lot of just thinking, talking. We engage them a lot of, again, we want them to model the 4 C's, so we try to get them thinking critically as well. And then we have an instructional management meeting that we do each month where we actually teach them things so they can take back and teach their staff. Again, the focus is on them being those instructional leaders.
So, Kurt, Matt, you mentioned that you have a very progressive board. What have you done to reach beyond the board and out into the broader community?
Well, our story is very similar. We started, I think, back in December, just doing some community outreach on the Common Core, and again, it's just been ongoing. From there, it's kind of evolved into our LCAP. A couple things that are similar to Hesperia is that we had a board meeting at an elementary school, And what the students did to demonstrate the Common Core is they had an activity. It was a very simple question. How many fish are in Big Bear Lake? Each student was directly in front of a board member or someone from district administration. Someone leaned to me and said, Kurt, would you mind if I Googled this before the student says anything? And I said, no, let's go through that process. That was a very profound experience, to have our board members engage with a 6th grade student, walking them through the activity. Every time we have an opportunity, if it's a district management meeting, if it's something out in the community, we really try to make sure people understand what the Common Core is, and just talk about, let's talk about good teaching. What does that mean to you? And it's amazing that within 5 to 7 minutes, they clearly articulate what the Common Core is. We did this last week with our DLAC meeting, and I am not fluent in Spanish, and they got it within 5 minutes. I was in a focus group for 6th grade students for the LCAP. They said there's been a major change this year. The teachers are letting us talk. The teachers are letting us get involved in project-based learning. My brain's kind of a little bit more tired at the end of the day because I'm thinking more, I'm writing more, I'm speaking more, and I think that's great for all of our students. So we embed that to every type of meeting that we can. The other part of this question was if we had any type of resistance or maybe pushback. Back in December, we had a meeting with about 25 to 40 people. There were 2 people in the meeting that were just a little bit older than me. And they were concerned about data mining. And I asked 3 or 4 nice questions to open up the conversation. And then finally I said, if you really have any issues or concerns, I welcome you to join me. Let's go out to our schools. It's a public school. Our doors are open. They never took me up on that invitation. Another person that was at the same meeting wanted to meet with me one-on-one. And I said, okay, what would you like to do? He says, how about if we go out to lunch? And I said, okay, that's fine. So we started the lunch, and near the end he says, is there anyone around? And I looked to my left, and I looked to my right, and I said, no, I don't think so. He said, I want to play a recording, a tape recording. How many people remember cassette tapes? Okay, did you get the picture? It was, I think, something I used when I was going to San Diego State back in the 1980s in my Volkswagen. I would play it back and forth to listen to my notes in class. He said, I want you to listen to this tape. And I leaned into it, and it was a tape about how the Common Core actually started from a student's perspective. And I listened, and I listened, and I listened. After 5 minutes, and I said, wow, I really want to thank you for sharing that. I wasn't at that meeting. We might want to refocus on the here and now to say, is this really good for students? Then there was no argument. So I think there was a little bit of a pushback there, and that's fine, but I think we need to refocus on the here and now, where we're going to go, because again, like we've said this morning, this is a golden opportunity to move forward with all of our students.
David McLaughlin, do you want to talk about pushback experience?
I would say we've had really very little. But we've had several challenges, mostly on a one-on-one or somebody making a comment. And I think Robert, one of the reasons Robert really emphasized the fact that we're really pushing or focused on good teaching and good learning is that once you explain what our goal really is, and that we're not really focused on standards as much as good teaching, they become more comfortable, and you can do that with them, as Kurt said, by asking questions. And in most cases, the more questions you ask, they'll almost answer and resolve the problem for themselves just in asking the questions. And are there others that you want to address, Robert?
I think the biggest pushback that we've had, and I agree, I mean, with the teachers, is time. I mean, the NEA president said, time is, in order for this to happen, collaboration has to happen. Now, fortunately, in this area, we have our collaboration day on Wednesdays, and trying to explain how it should be properly used instead of co-collaboration is a little bit different. If you know what that means, then you're smiling. But certainly, what we've been trying to do with our, especially with our administrators, is to recognize that in order for this to be successful, that symbiotic relationship has to happen with PLCs and the implementation of the new standards. And they have to have time to talk about it. So, we had some things scheduled. That's what we do as principals. We scheduled the whole year out, we'll look at it, And we've asked them to pull that back. And instead of let's doing this type of training, not that it's not important, but let's give them time to talk. And we've also provided funds for them to, take some days where they can really look at some things. Now, certainly, and I understand in California, money has not been there. But in order for this to be successful, we have to provide some funds there. We have to provide that release time. So that's been the biggest inhibitor right there. And plus, going back as far as an inhibitor, the change, just the change. It's not so much a physical change, it is a change up here as far as the depth of knowledge and what we expect the teachers to be doing with the kids now. For so long we have programmed them because of the CSTs, let's go to the Blooms and let's make sure we get that knowledge and comprehension, but there's no connection. And so we have to retrain in that aspect as far as making sure our teachers understand this is the real reason why we're here. And so that's been a philosophical change that we've had as far as not so much a resistance, but a different way of doing business. It's not that we taught to the test, but we taught kids how to take a test. There's a difference here. There's a difference here. And so that's been the inhibitor that we've had to this degree so far, looking at, okay, how can we make this better? That release time, that validation time that Mr. Kane really pointed out there is critical right here. One of the things, my big aha, because as we go through, and as a site administrator, and I am one of those secondary people, looking at, well, what's really important here? I came back to looking at safety and security, Maslow. And it just hit us one time. We've got to demystify this. We've got to validate what they're doing in the classroom, because a lot of our teachers, they're doing Common Core type strategies already, and they're doing it well. But we need to reemphasize that if you just change it just a little bit, that you'll get exactly what you need. And so this whole process that we've been talking about for the last year, and I'm looking at Michael Kelly right now, and he's nodding, because some of the things that we're doing as a county, we've been doing for a long time. They're called AVID strategies. And they're abundant, and a lot of our teachers have been trained. And so as we say, okay, they're AVID strategies, and what does it look like? They're very comfortable. Oh yeah, I know how to do that. I know how to do that already. So we're validating their practice, we're validating them as a professional, and we're also trying to make this very understandable. For 15 years, we asked you to do the California standards, and we ask you to do them in English, right, or whatever language. It's not like now that we're doing the new state standards, and for that English stuff we used to, now you got to do it in German. We're not doing that to them. Okay, we're reemphasizing you're doing the good things that you ought to be doing, but let's take a moment, let's analyze it, let's go through our unit of aesthetics, let's look at the learning and see if that's really working. And going back to the PLC 4 questions, that's where the biggest benefit is. What do we do if they don't learn? What do we do, et cetera, et cetera? And that's what the teachers are really focusing on. That's what's getting us over the hurdle.
So Robert mentioned money, which is always a problem, but the state did appropriate $1.25 billion for Common Core implementation. And in Bear Valley, how did you think about that for use for technology, instructional materials, and professional development? How did you all think about the allocation of those resources?
I'm going to turn it over to my coaches.
Well, we came up with an implementation plan and kind of divided the money out based on surveyed results of teachers and parents and teachers and the community, and so with that money, with the instructional materials money, we're spending it on things that go with the units that the teachers are creating. And we've looked at, we're kind of taking a cautious approach to the instructional materials that are out there, and instead we're looking at what we have already and what we can continue to use, and then we're adding in resources from the internet, such as the Basel Alignment Project that kind of helps us use the materials we have. We're looking at Georgia Math activities to give us ideas on how to add application to the procedural activities that we're doing. And our teachers are finding a lot of stuff on Teachers Pay Teachers. So we've set a lot of the instructional materials aside for money aside for next year, because we're still developing our units, and we want to make sure we have the resources to put those into full effect next year. Technology money, we purchased a lot of Chromebooks for our schools, for the upper grades. iPad minis are kind of the way we're going with primary grades, and really our first thing was to get computer labs working in all the schools, because they were not all operational. And then for professional development, that money was divided by schools so that they could make site decisions on how that's being spent. They're using conferences, but a lot of that money is going to pay for subs, so for the PLCs that we do, the grade level meetings, so that the teachers can be together. And I think that's our biggest bang for our buck, is when the teachers sit down together and create those units. Anything else?
As I mentioned earlier, with middle school, we integrated our math this year, which was kind of early, and we chose CPM, which is College Preparatory Math. I see some of you writing that down. It's mixed reviews. I'm not saying you need to rush out and get it. It's been to mixed reviews. Some of the teachers love it and some don't. But we're still constantly reviewing the material. And I think, just as Lisa said, I want to reiterate that the most valuable or bang for the buck seems to be providing time for teachers to work together and write their own curriculum. They sit down with the standards or figure out how to apply this or what project can go across different courses. And that seems to be the money that's been invested. That seems to be the most valuable, I would say.
So, Jovi, I'll let you take the lead on this question.
Okay, yeah, we wrote our plan as well, and we have a full, we call it Priority 21, our actual educational services action plan with our instructional design. And what we've done with the monies, the over $4 million, we, based on our needs in our district, our focus has been a big chunk of that money, 75% of that money went to technology and the infrastructure. I don't speak tech very well, so I'm just gonna say we put a lot of money in technology so that all our schools are up and running, so that when we do, our goal is to get a device in every student's hand, to have a one-on-one. And when we do that, we want to be able to have it, everybody turn on, everybody get access to the internet without it crashing. So that's a goal. So we have that in place. Does that money fully cover that amount? No. So we have other pots of money that are going towards getting us up and running as far as the technology goes. Then we put another 10% in instructional materials. Again, we're not emphasizing necessarily purchasing textbooks. We're developing our materials as we go, and that leads back to what you said about time for the teachers, and that leads to the professional development. We designated another 15% to professional development on top of our Title II monies and other monies we've given to sites, so they can determine where they need to increase either training or time for teachers. And again, our big emphasis has been to meet the needs of the teachers, going back to that Maslow, that lower level, making sure we meet those lower level needs. Teachers want to feel comfortable, so meeting together and truly focusing their time together has been instrumental. So again, that's kind of how we've broken up the monies.
Anything to add?
I would say that one of the things with professional development, our district, again, trying to have that deliberate process for deliberate results, developed a target. And we constantly, in all of our trainings with management, with our board, with our teachers, we focus on that target. And we start at the center of the target. Why are we doing this? And that's the moral imperative to make sure that we are leading learning. And then we look at the outside of the target, and that's the what is the standards. And so we know what those are, so we don't need to focus on the outside too much. We really need to focus on the inner and the how. And so as we start to allocate money and look at the materials and look at the conversations, especially release time, PLCs, that how part is really important. I don't know, David, if you want to elaborate on that, because that's really where we spend most of our time in our CART presentations, our workshops that we do.
you know, I teased that, you know, I had this epiphany. I was sent to some training about, well, coming up on 3 years ago now.
Voluntold.
I was voluntold to participate in this, but it's my own fault because I've been pushing the district, you know, from my classroom for years, sending emails up the chain of command about what are we going to do about these new standards. You know, I've just gotten a draft from the National Council of Teachers of English. What are we going to do? So it's my own fault. I blame myself. But in the beautiful resort city of Barstow, sorry, oh wait.
There could be someone here.
I know, I'm sorry. I didn't mean no offense that way. But we had an epiphany there. You know, prophets went to the desert for an epiphany, right? And sure enough, the light came down. And it was, we cannot do this if we don't do this together. Unless we have a collaborative model in place, whether that's PLCs, whether that's understanding by design, whether that's whatever the collaborative model that you have in place and can capitalize best upon, that's the way this really happens. As teachers talk together, build these units of study that are authentic to their own experience, to the needs of their students, you know, that are representatives of the resources that they have, and build on that and build something really great for students. We liken it to the metaphor that we either have a trickling Colorado River over billions of years carving the Grand Canyon, and we'll be at the same place with Common Core standards in 15 years as we are with California standards now. Or we have to have a series of massive floods, eroding massive quantities of earth, and that's what PLCs, that's what that collaborative model really does for us and our teachers.
I'm going to ask the superintendents one quick question, and then we'll conclude and then have some time for questions from the floor. And that is, what steps have you taken to address the special needs of English language learners as you implement Common Core? Both of you said you had about 25% ELs. How does that fit into your Common Core strategy?
I'd love to take that question, but I was told by one of my instructional coaches, this is her baby. So I've learned in marriage, I'm not always right, but I'm still married. I've learned with instructional coaches that I need to turn the mic over.
So this is an area that I've been working on with our district EL coordinator, and some of the steps that we've taken. She's recently adopted the English 3D curriculum and gone through some trainings with that. And the focus in that program, which we found was a pretty prevalent need with the EL kids, was academic language and the ability to use it and to talk and to discuss. And so there's a big focus in that curriculum on even how to talk in a group and how to function in a group, and she goes through the steps with that. She's also, this year we've taken up Academic Vocabulary Toolkit by Kate Kinsella. She went through the high school training. A bunch of us are going to be going through the elementary training with that. Part of the reason for that is trying to create a common language between the ELA classes and in the other content areas as well. She was finding that her EL students at the high school level would go to one English teacher in 9th grade and they'd go to a different one in 10th grade, and there would be different vocabulary and different ways of teaching things, and that confused some of the students that were still trying to get a grasp of the English language. So we're really trying to focus on K-12 articulation and the use of academic vocabulary across the board with that. She also runs quarterly ELAC and DLAC meetings. They're very well attended and they're growing all the time. I think as they find that it's a friendly atmosphere and they're sharing the Common Core strategies and some of the changes that are going on with the parents, and they seem to really be buying into that. In our LCAP planning, we are also planning on bringing back intervention. That's been a big call that we've had to cut lately because of funds, but intervention before, during, and after school to service our EL kids and some of our SED students. We are looking at bringing back an intervention specialist, especially at the elementary level, to work with some of those students that are coming in. Our EL population is growing rapidly in Big Bear. They're discovering that it's a beautiful place to live, so they're starting to show up. We're also looking at bringing back summer school, which would address a lot of the needs as well. And finally, as Kurt mentioned, I'm also a grant writer for our district, and we have a very large grant, the CCLC grant, that we've inputted, hopefully to bring in after-school programs at the middle school with a lot of community partners and input in that area. And I think that's what we're doing at the moment. Always looking for more PD and training. Our district curriculum coordinator for EL is very good at going to the different sites and doing trainings, and like we said, we have 5 schools in our district, so it's a little bit easier for us to do actually 6 schools with our continuation. 7, oh sorry, I forgot, our elementary sidekick. So we're very blessed in that area and fortunate that we can do some training it's not such a huge momentous thing. When I meet with the middle school, it's 1 middle school and there's 8 English teachers. So it works really well for us. But that's kind of what we're doing with our EL population at the moment.
And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it over to the team.
Okay, just wanted to emphasize that, yeah, very similar. We do some very similar things. We do have a coordinator, a director over EL, and we have a full team, and we actually have a district coach who focuses on training our staff in the area of EL strategies. So, but with that, since Jody is the coordinator of staff development, she has more detail.
25% of our students are English language learners, but what we've learned is when you focus on good teaching strategies, it's really good for all kids. And so we've looked at GLAD, and we certainly do incorporate some GLAD strategies, but we really look at SIOP, Specialized Instruction Observation Protocol. It's really out of Cal State Long Beach, if you haven't heard of it. And so we have a teacher very well trained in that, and she's done Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 training. And if you're not familiar with it, it's about 15 behaviors that you incorporate over these 3 years of intense training. And it's about making sure that we have language objectives, that we're having student interactions, but again, very much good strategies for all students. We have an EL task force. We've developed 8 teachers that have gone through all 3 tiers of these training, and they're very strong in it. And so what they're doing is they're meeting monthly. They're using the new ELD standards as a way to guide into the Common Core, or as we call them, the new state standards, as the gateway. We continue to provide after school and all kinds of workshops, and we're utilizing technology in a new way so that it helps not just I have the technology, but how is the technology utilized to actually bring learning, that the students are learning. We obviously send our teachers to NABE and CABE to keep them up to date with current research. But I'd like to talk that we really looked at the shifts. The shifts in English require that students defend, justify, argue, write more. We need to do that with all students. We do have an effective model of instruction that we call, and that requires that they use 30 minutes of focused academic instruction a day. And they use the EDGE curriculum for that, so they'll make some modifications. But really it's integrated, and we use our CELT scores to drive our instructional decision making. We really want to look at how do we balance the complex texts that are required of new standards with the maturity level of our students and as those scores have come in, and then what those tasks are, and how are teachers engaging units of study in tasks that are relevant to all students. And of course, you do have to look at Kate Kinsella and her work with tiered vocabulary. And we really need to build basic Tier 1 vocabulary. But if we're not getting Tier 2 vocabulary going across curriculum, everyone describing, everybody illustrating, everybody concluding, everybody justifying, we won't get to the Tier 3 vocabulary, because I think as times have changed, in an older system of accountability, when you were focused on, we're being tested in English language arts, we're being math, we lost history, we lost science at the elementary level, and now we're going to bring back history and science as the way to engage project-based learning for all students, and then English and math will be attached to that. And so I think that as we work with all students, low income, English language learners, just the population that we service, we will find that it's going to increase our scores. And we really hope to look for redesignation, which I'm going to segue to Joby.
I just want to highlight that there was a study done, and I just want to give accolades to our director, who's not here, but also we got notice that there was a study done, promising practices for EL students, and that it will be released by CDE, but we were acknowledged that we are one of the schools that they're highlighting, school districts, highlighting that we have a high percentage of our EL students in and completing A through G requirements, and our rates going into college are increasing from our EL pod. So I just want to give accolades to Daryl, who's not here. Shout out, Daryl.
Okay, I'm going to start with Jeremy, and we'll go very quickly just go down the line. Jeremy, what do you see as the biggest challenge as you move forward with Common Core implementation?
I think convincing some teachers that it really is different. I think some people tend to say, it's just the same, it's just good teaching, which is true, but there are some big differences. And I think the application, me as the science guy or STEM guy, that's easy for me to see, but that, I don't know if that's the biggest challenge, but that's what I enjoy maybe the most about it. We started a STEM academy at the middle school where we can take the standards. It's not just standards where you're ticking them off, but it's applying them in project-based and cross-curricular application of learning and what we should have been doing all this time. And that's really, really actually very exciting for me. So.
I think the biggest challenge right now is, as some of my teachers have told me, I'll send them, oh, there's this great website, oh, there's this great resources here. And they said, that's great, but we don't have the time to sit down and go through all of that. So I'm hoping as we start developing curriculum days at the middle school and the high school like they are at the elementary, we will give them the time to do that. But I would have to say and even, there's a lot of resources out there and some of them are good, but it's better to focus on one and pick a lot of things. I know Achieve the Core has a plethora of information for teachers, and while there's a lot of other good ones, it's too much information at this point. So right now I think they're being inundated with internet resources. Yeah, those are great, but who has the time to go through them all and sift through them? So again, it's time, and it's focusing down on some resources, and the developing of their own curriculum is difficult when they've been handed a textbook for the last 15 years.
And along that same theme, time to collaborate, time to get together. We're looking at restructuring how we do our professional development days, and so that teachers have more time and more regular time to meet.
I would agree time is the four-letter word. However, I am so glad to be at almost April of this first year that it's really kind of like an apprenticeship, that it could take us 5 to 7 years, but we have made such gains this year. And the other day I was in a classroom when a teacher was giving an SBAC, a practice test, and the teacher said, now I understand the Common Core. That was profound, because I don't need to say anything now. They get it, they want to improve, build those units of study, and I think year two, we'll see probably a 30% gain if we can keep high expectations and high levels of support. So I'm extremely optimistic.
We'll invert your order here.
That's
fine. You're probably expecting me to say exorcism again. And I do believe that is something that I do believe in. But as significantly, we need to build the confidence in teachers. You know, we have that group of teachers, you know, that have grown up, you know, being spoon-fed and spoon-feeding our students. And it's encouraging to finally see those veteran teachers that have been in the classroom, you know, 20 plus years, and then our brand new teachers who don't know any different, and those two collaborating, bringing the others along with them. So building that confidence in teachers that you know, we have a district that's really doing amazing things, and our teachers don't believe it. We have all these teachers that presented at our plugging in conference that we just had last Saturday. They did amazing things. They're on par with any conference that I go to in the state. They need that confidence to know that the things that they are doing for students are incredibly valuable and amazing, and should be celebrated not just at their school site and in our district, across the state, across this country. They are doing amazing things.
I work a lot with new teachers. We have a new teacher academy and an induction with the way BITS is changing. I think our university programs need to change a little bit, help prepare teachers maybe perhaps a little differently, and we need to work in partnership, I think, more with district and university leaders. I think that we have a group of teachers who have been prescribed. I'm shocked when someone says, tell me what you want me to do. And I'm gonna steal something because David didn't say it. We want them to grapple with how difficult this is, and as they struggle, they risk their curiosity, they risk their failure, then they're gonna know what their kids are gonna feel like to go through the same process. So we really need to support that depth of knowledge, and to support our superintendent. I really believe in his passion and the innovation that he's bringing to us, the support that we feel by that. And we were at Plugged In on Saturday, and I was working with Avid Strategies, doing one-pagers with a group of teachers practicing the 4 C's, where they had to collaborate, communicate, be creative, and think critically on a problem. And one teacher said to me, when I got to college, if I'd been doing this, I would have been prepared, because when I got to college, they said, we don't give tests like that. So we've got some things we need to, we've got places to go, but we're getting there.
Going off of what Jody just said, as far as having things set for us, and especially the textbooks, and using David's word as far as doing the exorcism with that we need the textbook in order to be successful. It's been hard. It's been hard for our teachers to understand that that textbook does not contain all the information. The good thing about the new standards are just a start. They're just a beginning. Not just everything you need to teach, but it's the doorway that opens everything else up for our teachers. And certainly as we go through this process, it's very hard for our teachers to get away from that, because we've done this to them. We program them that on this day you shall do this. And so that autonomy that was mentioned earlier in the report, I was really surprised, because for 25 years I've been sitting there as a teacher, as a site administrator, and I've been told, Robert, just let us teach and we'll do. And I said, okay, fine, when I got in my job and I blew everything up, and they said, just tell us what to teach. And so that's been very hard for them. But certainly as we go through this process, it's been fantastic. And I'll just share this quick story, and I'll give this to Jovi. We did some PLC training last week, and at our site, we're trying to help out there. But one of the things that was really said, and it wasn't scripted, wasn't anything I planned in the audience for the teacher to say, but he said, you know what? This is one of the things that we should have been doing all along as far as working together. And he pointed around the room. He goes, this is what collaboration ought to be when we're figuring out problems, how to make it better. And when he said that, I just went, wow. My job's done. I'm done.
For that day. Just for the day. A lot of the similar things that Bear Valley's going through as well, the time, the communication overload, information overload that's out there. People don't know what to read anymore. They go, what do we get? Our emails are being inundated with all this information. So that's a huge problem for us to help winnow that down, to get them the right information. So that's why, again, across the board, trying to get the same information across the board to all our schools. But I think the biggest challenge is letting teachers know we really have a big push from our superintendent to allow that passion and innovation come through your teaching, through your practice, through what you do each day with our kids. As teachers, you show that passion and innovation, you model it, your students will take that on as well. That's going to prepare them for the future. Getting them to believe that they can take those risks, to let them put those guards down and say, no, there's not going to be this hatchet that comes down that you're not following the standards, but to truly believe in themselves. And I think David hit it as well about the teacher confidence, but to know that from our level, we aren't going to come down on them. We want them to be passionate and innovative in how they teach our students so that they truly can learn in the end. So that's a big challenge for us.
I think I often tend to think of things, especially this kind of a question, in a 10,000-foot view. And I think one of the greatest risks is actually that we try to make it look like 2007. And you mentioned this in one of your articles. I think we have the opportunity with the new assessment, the new core, the new funding model, and the new accountability plan to fundamentally change. And maybe it forces us, I'm hoping it will force us to not try to put things back in place the way they were 5, 6 years ago. And we talk a lot about that in our district, and I think the goal is to really take advantage of a new way of thinking and allow us to, and maybe we wouldn't even have had that without these fundamental changes in the funding and then the core. And I think that gives us an opportunity we probably wouldn't have, and we really need to take advantage of it. And part of my fear is that we don't take full advantage of it.
Great. Okay, we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. Yes, please.
General panel reaction regarding teacher training and Common Core.
Jody, you mentioned it, so maybe I'll.
It's so funny because I think teachers think they have to be Common Core trained, that there is Common Core training, and I think they think it looks like California State training, where we went back and you looked at this standard, and that's just not our approach to that. And so we look at, again, a target. Why are we doing this? It's the moral imperative. The what are the standards, but we really need big ideas and 4 C's. So how do we implement that, and what does that look like? And we really look at PLCs. Robert, do you want to?
Well, it's certainly part of the shifts is, and it was very well pointed on from Big Bear as far as, there are some things that we have to do here. But I think there's a misnomer out there, and I get to use this. I think there's a misnomer that there's this big Common Core truck that's going to back up at your school and offload all these boxes that say Common Core, and they're going to go to the teacher's classroom, they're going to open up, finally it's here. Okay, it doesn't, and again, it's a shift up here. It's not the strategies, and again, there are textbook companies, and I know that they're in business, but David convinced me that there's somebody that has created a Common Core stamp that's put out on textbooks, and say, okay, the new improved Common Core standard. But and I finally had my enough of it about 3 years ago, because I got an email that said, please view our new Common Core social studies textbook. Based on what? So those are the things that I'm really seeing as far as the teacher training.
Yes, please. Back.
Can you expound how both of you have mentioned the relevance, importance of the relevance, and the real-world applications? You're talking about the 4 C's, project-based learning, critical thinking. And I know that even in our teacher training programs at the university, we're not there yet as far as that critical thinking, inductive, deductive reasoning, and the content knowledge that is even necessary to be critical thinkers. Because we've done so much procedural, so much, check the box, that we're not there yet as critical thinkers, I think. So can you expound upon what, and I know that there's steps to get there, it's going to take some time, like you're saying,
Keep going, it's sounding better. This is good.
Sorry, but, how, I know we have to have the basic steps to get there. Just expound on what you're.
Yeah, I'll touch on it. I'm very, very passionate about instructional strategies. I guess as I've come up through the ranks, it's still with me today. And I think that's really the key right there is questioning techniques, looking at great lessons, looking at things that truly engage students. And it's amazing how a very tier 1 teacher can do that. And I think we need to create opportunities so our other teachers can see people teaching. And that's something we've talked about in our district. How great would it be if we could do a rotation or have a day, especially for our new teachers, to get out of their classroom, and I go back to the word context. Lisa gets it, I get it when we're in classrooms together with the principals, but take a professional to go into someone else's room and watch a 15, 20, 30-minute lesson, do a lesson study. That is profound. We wouldn't, again, have to say much more than that. So we really have to rethink that. It kind of goes back to that first question. David and I, probably 20% of our time is spent just on our own professional development. I think our teachers are getting slighted. Again, I think they're getting slighted because if they teach 180 days and we take 10% of that time, that would be 18 days. If we look beyond San Bernardino County, we look at a worldwide international, the countries that are truly stepping out, they find ways to do that. And I think, again, it's a disservice. We need to make that change now.
Okay, behind there was another question.
Yeah, I was reading in the LA Times this weekend, and there's a real discussion in the editorial about, on the one hand, there's an emphasis on writing instruction that we're all engaged in for the Common Core for writing. On the other hand, the redesigned SAT is now making the writing section optional. So how are you thinking about this? What might be some of your messaging? Because you certainly want to keep the depth of thinking in writing. So.
Yes, I read the very same thing.
Yes.
you know, and you think, wait a minute, David Coleman, who, you know, largely architect behind our language arts standards, now president of College Board, redesigning SAT. I know exactly the same feeling, because I felt the same internal conflict last week when I heard that. What's best for students? What's really best? Regardless of that SAT pulling that out, we know what's best for students. We know that we need to maintain that emphasis on writing. And as we tell all the teachers in our district, guess what? Everyone is now a reading and a writing teacher. Not in the sense, you know, that we're all teaching decoding and phonics and things like that, and say at the secondary level, but we're all placing an emphasis on it, that inside of our disciplines, we're teaching students how to be literate. How to be literate in that subject area. How to write like a scientist, how to read like a scientist, how to think like that. Those are the skills we absolutely have to build in our students. Whether or not that SAT test pulls that out, oh well. They're assessing for different things, you know, but I will guarantee you, and we probably have some college, university representatives here, students who are able to write, to articulate an idea, to base that in significant reasoning and evidence, that's exactly what we want our students to do. And so that's where our focus needs to remain.
It's time for one more question. Okay, I'd like to thank our panel.